Adams. Senior Focus is a show designed for folks over the age of about 50 or so. But again, at any age, we hope you find some information of value to you. We bring this show to you through Armstrong's Channel 20, and thanks to Greg Roten of Armstrong Cable for that. And also thanks to Keith Kaiser. We're coming again to you from the Davis Visitor Center at Mill Creek Metro Parks at the Fellows Riverside Gardens. And certainly if you have a chance to stop in at the Davis Center, it's a great time to do so all year round. Today's topic will be Hospice of the Valley, and we're glad to welcome Jay Eastman. Jay is the chaplain with Hospice of the Valley. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah. We were talking a little bit before the show started. You have quite a bit of experience at hospice. Maybe you could just talk about what you do and you know how long you've been there.
Okay, I'm a chaplain for Hospice of the Valley. I started out volunteering when one of the men in the church I was ministering in this area got prostate cancer. And hospice came in, and they were really a benefit to this family. So I asked the man's wife about hospice, and she told me. So I went over at 5190 Market Street, where our main office is, and volunteered. And so I volunteered for 5 years, and they had a full-time chaplain. And his responsibility was, he mentored me actually, but he taught me and directed me in to what I was to do. And so I kind of got my cue from him. And then in 2000, when he left, they hired me to be a full-time chaplain. I was the only chaplain at that time. Now we have 4. Okay. So we've expanded. We grew from a small agency when I first started out, and we're between 280 and 300. Our projection this year is to have 300 patients daily.
Wow. Every day, on average, you're taking
care
of
Yes, that's what we want. Of course, that varies because sometimes we will get 9 admissions like we had yesterday in our interdisciplinary team meeting, which we call IDT. We had 9 admissions. Sometimes people will be in for a week or a day. It just depends on how ill they are. And we find sometimes doctors are slow to bring them to hospice, and we find then that the individual is with us a week. The longer they're with us, the better care we can give them.
Sure. Well, why don't we start at the top with the concept of hospice? I think a lot of people out there maybe have heard of that term, and certainly if you've used the services of Hospice of the Valley, you know what it is. But there are going to be a lot of people out there that are kind of maybe unfamiliar with what a hospice is. Yes.
The word hospice comes from the word hostel, which was used over in Europe, which was a place where people could go to stay. Dame Cicely Saunders, as I understand from reading about her life, was taking care of a gentleman who had a large house. When he died, she decided, after caring for him as a nurse, she felt there was a real need for people who were dying to receive care. And so she converted this house into what became the hospice movement, and she is considered the woman who started the movement. It came to America. The first hospice in America is in New Haven, Connecticut. I actually visited that when my son was going to Yale doing his doctorate. We went down there one day. They have a 52-bed facility, wonderful facility, out by the water. And while we were visiting, they had taken some patients out near the water. This was in the warm time of the year, and these people were able to share with their families out in this really tranquil setting. It was wonderful. And the Hospice of the Valley started here. The National Jewish Women in 1979 did a pilot study. From that pilot study, they felt that the Youngstown area needed a hospice, and so in 1980, they started the first hospice, or our Hospice of the Valley, here, and so we've been in business here since 1979.
Well, you brought up the Yale original hospice here in the U.S. and how the tranquil setting, and that reminded me of a personal experience. Just recently, I was out at the Hospice House visiting someone, and that's a beautiful setting and beautiful location. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that, about the Hospice House and how that came to be.
Well, when I came to hospice, they had a vision, and the vision was we were one of the few areas that did not have a facility for people who are dying. Sometimes people are in need of extra care. We can't give them at home, but we don't want to be in a hospital setting. So they ask all the employees to make a commitment. So for 3 years, I did a payroll deduction, just like I give to my church. I had money deducted for the Hospice House, and I was there in 2007 when he was Senator DeWine at the time, dedicated the building, and it was a big event. And from that hospice house, I have been there as a chaplain with people when they've taken their final journey. It's a tranquil place. One lady told me, she said, this is like a ski lodge. Well, I'm not a skier, so I've never been to a ski lodge. But there is this tranquility, this peacefulness there. And people come there, and as one lady told me, she said, this is the best kept secret in the Youngstown area. And she said, I didn't know we had this kind of medical facilities available to us. And I told her, I said, well, this is the kind of facility, and hospice is the kind of care you don't know about till you need it. And then when you need it, you find out what a blessing it is. And every day, one time at Christmas time, I was at the mall, and I was in line to get coffee. It was a big line, and my wife was gone, and this woman walked up to me and hugged me. My wife happened to come back, and she looked at me, who is this woman? And this woman started crying and said, oh, you took care of my dad, and how wonderful the care was. And that happens a lot of times to us. We just run into people we've helped, and they're so thankful for the care that we have given, their loved one.
Yeah, and again, at the hospice house, in my experience, you have a little kitchen area and very comfortable areas for family to visit.
Yes.
And I guess that goes to the whole point of hospice is, we're all going to pass away eventually. And in the past, certainly when I was growing up, it was mostly almost everybody went to the hospital.
Yes.
There was either prolonged illness or accident or whatever it was. And that was a traumatic setting. It was, certainly the doctors and nurses are doing great work in trying to care for people, but it's not the most humane, I guess, setting because there's all the machines and things.
Well, and the difference with the hospice house, we don't do anything which we call curative. Mm-hmm. We allow what the literature calls a good death. We don't, like Jack Kevorkian, people knew about him, he ended lives. We don't end lives. What we do is keep people comfortable, and we minister to the physical, the spiritual, the emotional, and of course whatever medical needs they have. And generally we keep pain managed. So the hospice house, when we can't manage their pain at home, we'll take them there for pain management. That's one reason they go there. Mm-hmm. A second reason, if the family is overwhelmed, they call that respite care. They'll go there for respite care. And sometimes an individual doesn't want to die at home, and they'll want to go there. I had a patient when I first started in Trumbull County whose significant other wouldn't take care of him, so he sold his house, and he became a full-time resident there and actually died there. Now, we're not doing that now because with the only 16 beds, we are inundated with people wanting to come there. So we have 16 beds. We have the nurses area. We have, as you said, the kitchen area. We have shower facilities for families. I've been there to see families where we have rollaway beds we bring out. And families can stay there with their loved one as long as they want to stay. Mm-hmm. We have a chapel upstairs, and they can go upstairs. The facility is just made to be non-medical. It looks more, as this woman said, like a ski lodge. Okay,
right.
It looks more like a facility you would go in to relax, and all the furnishings give you this peaceful feeling. The building is such that when you go there, you don't get the clinical feeling at all. Mm-hmm. And of course, at the end of life, we feel people ought to have this opportunity to share, and that's what we try to do there, is have these people share the end-of-life journey with their loved one.
And of course, we've been talking about the hospice house and hospice of the Valley, but I would imagine most of the people, the vast majority you're treating are at home, or again, there are other settings, nursing homes and such.
Yes, most of our patients are at home. We do have some patients that are in nursing homes, and we just started recently. We would bring somebody into the hospice house for what they call GIP. Well, now with nursing homes, we found that some of our competitors were giving GIP in nursing homes, so that's what we're doing now. In other words, we'll give them the kind of care they would get if they were at the hospice house, but in the context and the setting where they're at. And of course, I have found in working with these people that when I go to see a patient, their roommate, they become like family together. So when this person dies, I've been asked to go back to some nursing homes and have what they call a debriefing or a service where the faculty and the staff can get together and can share their grief. Sometimes some of these individuals have been in these homes for 10 or 15 years, and the staff have become like family to them. Sure. So when this person dies, it's a loss to them. Mm-hmm. And here in Western culture, we don't grieve very well. We use euphemisms for death, but this is an opportunity, again, for hospice to reach out to staff people to help them as well as the patients that we have.
Mm-hmm. Now, I know you have counseling groups. I was looking on your website, and again, the website is, I believe it's just Hospice of the Valley.
Yes, Hospice of the Valley.
.com?
I think it is, yes.
And on the website, you have a calendar of events, and I noticed that you have like a grief counseling group.
Well, they don't use the term counseling, Bill. What they call it is grief help. Our grief people say they're social workers, and they say we're not counselors, but we're grief facilitators. We help them facilitate with their grief. And a lot of people, when a loved one dies, go through a time where they are struggling with what's happened. And so we provide not only for people in our program, but we're also like the Twin Towers when they fell. If there's a tragedy here, we could be called upon to go out as grief people. When I did my clinical and pastoral education last year, when I graduated, one of the things that when I was in the program, what would happen if a tragedy happened, we would go out as chaplains, not only from hospice, but representing the community to help people. So we have grief available. Now, they also go into the schools because there are so many shootings here in Youngstown. They go into schools. My personal account for me, last summer, my daughter-in-law died. And one of the grief people gave me a video that Disney did with some of the Muppets, and they talk with kids about death and what's happening. Because children don't grieve like adults, and because of that, sometimes adults expect children to grieve like adults do, and they don't. So personally, I was benefited by what hospice provides. And so if a family comes in and they have little children, and the children are struggling, if it's their grandmother, then we have materials available. And I have given some of those materials to kids and viewed them, and they're really excellent. They talk in terminology that children can understand.